The episode of Culture Quest you're about to watch is brought to you by
RBC Wealth Management, we know you have ideas that can have you doing good or feeling great. What ideas will you bring to life?
Is a tiny town of around 15,000 people on the remote northwest coast of Australia. It's a stunning place with endless beaches, incredible food, and anything and everything for the adventure traveler. Broome is actually closer to Singapore than Sydney, and it's a place known for its long-standing cultural diversity. That diversity all revolves around the pearling industry here, the labor they needed to keep it going, and the oyster, Pinctada maxima, the largest oyster in the world. At one point, the oysters coming out of here were responsible for around 80% of the world's buttons, as well as mother of pearl used for cutlery handles, mother of pearl inlays, and more. Before the pearling industry arrived, there was, of course, tens of thousands of years of Aboriginal history here. For these people, that pearl shell, not the pearl, was an identifier for their culture, their history, and their traditions. So, we're starting out with Johani Mamid, Yawuru and Bardi man, and he's the owner of Mabu Buru Tours, an Aboriginal-owned company that introduces his guests to the many layers of Aboriginal culture here.
My old people, my ancestors, we often say old people when we're referring to our ancestors.
Yeah.
My old people basically used to walk around with a ceremonial artifact, which is the pearl shell. The pearl shell hanging off a belt made out of hair. And so the men would wear that. There was art on the pearl shell. And so when people came through here in the earlier days, saw Aboriginal people with the pearl shell, hey, what's that? Where did you get that? And found out that these pearl shells actually came from our waters in this area right here.
Okay.
And so also a nice location with Broome being a bit of a peninsula,
Yeah.
covered by right next to a bay and all these mangroves and everything, and obviously the habitat for the pearl shells. The people from this whole northwest region
Yeah.
are the pearl shell people. And so any pearl shells you find as ceremonial, like, you know, in photos and videos of Indigenous people throughout Australia,
Yeah.
we know that they've come from this region. So we've traded with our neighbours who have always had a respectful relationship with,
Yeah.
and they've given us something for that trade, you see. So, and then they've traded with their neighbours, and then it's gone on and on and on,
Right.
all gifted, and then it's gone all the way right past Uluru, down to New South Wales, right in South Australia. And these pearl
So
shells
like
come
this
all the way
trade
from over here.
route of exchange going on.
That's right.
And in Yawuru life, those day-to-day objects held an important role in passing the community's history down for generation after generation.
In our culture, in Aboriginal culture here in Australia, you'll often hear about storytelling,
Yeah.
singing, dancing, and art. The reason why is because we never had a library in my culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so in our culture, the closest thing to a library is our art.
Gotcha.
And so our art might be on our artifacts.
Okay.
So our boomerangs or our shields, and things like that. And so that's, we have a walking around with something that kind of tells a story.
Yeah, exactly. I asked
Yeah.
you if you wanted to set them down. You said, nope, you know what, I always hold
Yeah,
on to these
that's
because
right.
it's just what we...
Yeah, so these are what we use. So when we tell a story, quite
Yeah.
often that story might have a song. And the reason why, you imagine talking to the kids who were all, 1,000 years ago, they were always in school. Their school was wherever they were, so
Right.
they're always learning.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you imagine telling stories, and you're telling a million stories,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden it gets pretty boring, hey? And they get mixed up. And so, but if we have a story that has a song, Well, it's not hard to mix it up, and
Yeah.
it makes it interesting, especially if that song comes with a
I
dance.
love that practical sort of, how are we going to get the kids to remember
That's right.
our history, yeah.
You know, one of the other things that we don't really talk about enough in this day and age is that they're actually, you know, kids and adults, everybody learns better in different ways. You know, storytelling,
love that.
me
Yeah,
telling you a lot
yeah.
of things might not necessarily be suitable for you to learn. So let's sing a song, let's do a dance, and you learn, you know, because the way you think is different, you know. So people are different, and different techniques work in different ways. So if we're combining them all in how we share and teach,
Yeah.
then we've got a better chance of our next generations learning what they need to learn as a part of survival, and, you know, practicing and knowing who they are.
Well, and in stark contrast to the Western, certainly my European American background, where it's,
Yeah.
here's your lesson book, you're going to learn the stuff in this book
Yeah.
the way we teach it to you. There you go. I love this sort of advanced teaching technology that's been going on for 30. How long do you talk about people being here?
Well,
Like
you know,
tens of thousands of years.
people often talk about 40,000 years.
Yeah.
The reason why 40,000 years exists as a number is
Yeah.
because of Mungu man. Mungu man is a fossilized skeleton that was found in a Mungu lake, I think it is.
Okay.
There was a Mungu man, and then there was a woman as well, and they've dated those back to be about 40,000 years. Then in the Pilbara, I think it was, they found an axe or a tool of some kind that actually dated back to 60,000 years.
Oh, wow.
So people use the number 60,000 years old. But hey, why does it stop there? Just because we don't have evidence that goes back further.
Totally right, yeah.
So we say more than 60,000 years.
Yeah.
But for me, what we say in our culture is we've been in these places ever since the beginning.
Johanni took us over to a quiet little bay on the edge of town for a little dip in the water and a picnic, and then we jumped back into the topic at hand. Johanni sees his role as a tour operator in part to show tourists what Yawuru life was like before Europeans arrived here, and also to help explain what it's like now for his culture by showcasing the struggles and the successes of trying to blend 60,000 years of tradition with modern life.
Talking about culture is pretty hard to do without talking about country. And people want to see certain things that are beautiful. So
Yeah.
we always do our tours out on country. Yeah. And so Mabu Buru Tours was about all of that, teaching people about who we are, why we are the way that we are, helping them to get a better understanding of all of that. Yeah. Like I said, it contributes into the space of reconciliation, but also
Yeah.
sharing the beautifulness of not just our culture, but our country. So it's a pretty important industry, you know, the Indigenous tourism space. And so we all got different ways of sharing how we have that connection to country, and how we've done that for thousands of years. The new world that we're in now, trying to look after country, can learn from the old world as well. Part of what we do in tourism isn't trying to convert people.
Yeah.
We're just helping to give them that understanding that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And if we're doing that in the wrong way, they might get the wrong understanding and, you know, maybe get aggressive against the rest of the world because they learnt about our mistreatment in our history. So we make sure they learn, hey, look, we're learning from what we've done in the past, and let's make sure we do the right thing moving forward. Things like that. But we have to do it while living in these two worlds, maintaining a balance in these two worlds that we live in. This traditional, cultural part of who we are, but also trying to maintain an economic survival just like everybody else in this world.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to maintain a balance. And we're also in an area now where people have a choice. You have options.
Right.
You can do this and just do this.
Yeah.
You know, just live the way everybody else does because no one's forcing you to do that. Or you can do this, but then, or this rather, but then you struggle economically. Yeah?
Right.
And so how do we maintain that balance in our lifestyle as individuals, but also as a community?
Right.
Is by help people to understand that that exists.
Right.
Yeah,
Not one or the other, but both.
that's right.
And now we fast forward to the 1800s when Europeans were here and the pearling industry had started to take hold. But it started in a dark place, with most of the labor coming from Aboriginal communities in the area. A significant portion of that labor coming from forcing or even kidnapping men, women, and children into working in all aspects of the industry, a practice known as blackbirding. But as the industry grew, pearlers started looking for more labor from other countries to work alongside the local Aboriginal populations, drawing from places like China, Malaysia, Philippines, Timor, and Japan, where there was plenty of skilled labor willing to leave home and come to Broome to try and strike it rich. And the hub of all of these cultures was in Chinatown. It was the social, commercial, and cultural heart of Broome and the center of the pearling industry. Around 2017, Broome invested millions of dollars in a revitalization project of Chinatown. Part of that project involved public art, celebrating the diverse history here. That brings us to Chris and Robin Maher, who run a tour company called Salty Plum Social, giving visitors all manner of deep dives into Broome's unique cultural history. And Chris was kind enough to take me around town to show off all of the great new public art that came from that revitalization project.
So before this $30 million investment down here...
Oh yeah, that's right.
Before that, which is about 6 years ago, the history of public art in this town was much the same as the history of public art anywhere in Australian country towns, which was lots of brass plaques spread around the place, talking about what some white bloke did.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
That's our history of public art.
Yep.
This $30 million project kind of changes things. This lookout was the first part of that project.
Yeah.
And this roof is the first piece of Yawuru art in the public domain. This was designed by a Yawuru woman called Matsuri, and it's a bit hard to see, but there's two giant salmon swimming along here. But, and I challenge you to think that this hill up here...
The sand?
Yes, the sand is really the first bit of public art in Broome, because that is a shell midden. Do you know this term?
No, I don't.
M-I-D-D-E-N. So it's about 50,000 years evidence of Yawuru habitation around here.
Oh,
Yawuru people fishing in that bay, taking shellfish to a communal dining area, eating shells, discarding shells, bit of wind and sand, more fishing, more communal dining, more wind and sand, and over an era of somewhere around 50,000 years, that hill has risen from nothing to that high. And the reason there's nothing growing up there is because it's just crushed shell. That's all it is.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
It is extraordinary. So should we go for a wander?
Yeah.
Each street has a theme related to Broome history and all of the cultures that called this place home over the years. And there are several art pieces throughout the neighborhood, like laser-cut pillars and streetlight covers done in a Japanese motif, statues dedicated to the founders of the first cultured pearl farm in Australia at Koori Bay, a sculpture highlighting the connection of Yawuru people with the pearl shell, a life-size bronze statue of a hard-hat pearl diver, a multilingual street sign calling out all of the languages spoken here, and the giant fusion sculpture at the entrance to Chinatown.
Normally I wouldn't be super keen on a sculpture with so many different elements in it.
Yeah.
But there's something about the way this one is done where they're so subtle.
Yeah.
They're blending in really nicely and they all have meaning.
I
think it's so well done. And it's like, I mean, I just went through this whole experience. It was like, oh wait, no, there's shells there. Oh wait, there's
you
this
can see so many things.
Yeah, and the wood and the cording.
But your observation of all those different, lots of elements.
Yeah.
It's kind of good because that reflects the pearling industry. There was so many elements, so many cultures and so many things that happened in that industry. So.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing, this confluence of all these different people, all these different moments in time, and events in history coming together in this tiny little place to make it what it is?
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
He also showed us a series of benches here that highlight a famous and illegal gambling game here called Chifa.
This is a Chifa riddle, and this illegal game of Chifa was played here in Broome twice every day from the early 1900s to the mid-1970s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the best part of this whole story, everyone in Broome knew that game was rigged.
But they still
and nobody
played.
stopped gambling. Isn't that crazy?
That's pretty funny. I like that. I like that, yeah.
That brings us to Douglas Fong and his daughter Keira Fong. Doug's great-grandfather came to Australia from Hong Kong in the mid-1800s. Doug's grandfather, Louis Ling Tak, moved to Broome in around 1917 to open up a pearl shop. The Fong family would become one of the best-known families in town and were involved in all manner of businesses, including a general store which was one of the main social hubs for the diverse population of Chinatown. Doug's uncle actually ran one of the main two Chifa riddle games in town for decades up until the mid-1980s. And Doug helped design the Chifa benches we saw earlier.
There's the seats over there. You can see some writing, Chifa writing.
So that's all my great uncle Gungun.
And
my grandfather, that's what they used to run chief.
Oh, they used to run those games?
Yeah, so then the riddle was all on.
Behind this building, my Uncle George, bald-headed tailor he was called. He was obviously bald-headed, had been a tailor.
So he was called Bald-Headed Tailor?
Yeah.
That's a
We
great
called him
nickname.
Gug.
Doug's uncle ran his Chifa game twice a day, 6 days a week, from the 1950s to the mid-1980s. But officially, gambling was illegal, and it did not escape the local constabulary's attention. So, once a month, the police would show up.
They were okay with it.
Right.
But they were obliged to say, look, mate, you're running a gambling den.
Yeah.
You would say, no, I'm running a recreational facility for sailors.
Yeah.
They would say, okay,
Okay.
all right,
This back and forth between the police and his uncle would carry on for years and years.
That's so cool. I love that. That sort of below the surface going on in the neighborhood kind of thing, but yet everybody knows it's going on and it's a nod and a wink.
That kind of sums up Broome in many ways. It's like,
A nod and a wink.
Yeah, I don't care what somebody says to me from the national capital.
Right.
This is Broome and we're going to do things
Broome's
our way.
going to do what Broome's going to do, yeah.
It wasn't Wild West, it was something in between.
Okay.
Mild West.
Mild West, all right.
If you like, rather than Wild West.
But during the heyday of the pearling industry here, there were also racial tensions.
Dad was growing up, there was either you were coloured or you were white.
That's right.
Yeah.
Coloured or white.
Coloured or white.
Exactly.
And of course they had the common gate where Aboriginal people were locked out of town.
The Common Gate, a long fence with a gate, lasted until 1954.
There used to be a fence, and all Indigenous had to be out of town on the other side of that fence by 6 o'clock at night. We had lots of Indigenous
secret.
customers here.
Yeah.
They loved coming here because my mum and dad would talk to them.
But anywhere else they would go.
And be polite to them, rather than going to the big shops.
So we're owned by white people.
Owned by white people,
where
yeah.
It's like, what are you doing in here? You can't,
Yeah.
you can't come in here. So there's a kind of history here, but Broome's still, worked to the beat of its own drum. It did its own thing, and that's what makes this town so incredibly special.
While Chinatown was the hub for all of the various cultures mixing together in town, it was the pearling ships, which were called luggers, that became a sort of cultural crucible, where people of all different backgrounds were out at sea for months on end, fishing for pearl oysters, forming strong friendships with each other while doing highly dangerous and often deadly work in the tight quarters of a pearling lugger.
On a pearling lugger, you only got 2 divers.
Okay.
2 out of 8, 2 out of 9. Back before World War II, the Japanese probably occupied 90% of the jobs.
Okay.
They went deeper, took more risks, got more pearl shell then. And the tender, the bloke who held the rope, they had to be good friends because his life depended on it.
I heard
so
about
you had
it,
2 divers, 2 tenders. Then you had a mechanic, could be any nationality. Then you had a shell opener, dedicated bloke who opened the shell, found a pearl, put it into a box. Then you had 2 or 3 other crew. That could be anything else.
That brings us to the big Shinju Matsuri festival going on in town right now, which is in part why we're here this time of year. This huge annual festival all started from the melting pot of workers out on the luggers who would miss their major cultural celebrations while out at sea for months on end.
And you're seeing now coming into Shinju, and Shinju started from 3 celebrations. There was a Chinese celebration, which was Hang Seng, Japanese celebration, which was Obon, and the Malay celebration, which was Merdeka, which is Malay Independence Day. And the luggers would go out and they'd miss those celebrations while they were out in the pearling. While they were in the pearling luggers. So when they came in, they all celebrated it together. All the women cooked up and the men cooked up and celebrated. They had camps down there, Malay camps and divers camps on Dampier Terrace. And they all used to come in and everything smelled like food. Hey, Dad, like the smell and sounds and food and people and celebrations and dances.
It was this decades of blending festivals that ultimately led to today's Shinju Matsuri Festival, which started in 1971. The festival opens at the end of August with the Welcome to Country by Yawuru elders and the Waking of Sammy the Dragon. And it continues for 2 weeks with things like the Cultural Float Parade, the Carnival of Nations, the Chinatown Feast, Arts Awards, and the big closing event that we were lucky enough to get tickets to, the long table dinner out on Broome's famous Cable Beach.
That's pretty great.
If you make it to Broome, and you most definitely should, you would be hard-pressed to find a more festive time of year to be here when all of Broome's wide and varied cultures are on full display during Shinju Matsuri. Our next stop is up the coast 120 miles to Cygnet Bay to explore life in this remote outpost of northwestern Australia. And the trip itself up the coastline to get there is a thing of raw beauty. Our first stop is Cygnet Bay Pearl Farm, one of Australia's best known and oldest pearl farms. And their story is inextricably linked to the Bardi and Jawi Aboriginal communities that have called the land and sea here home for countless generations. Cygnet Bay Pearl Farm was founded in the 1940s by Dean Brown, a founding story that should be turned into a movie. James Brown is founder Dean Brown's grandson and is the current managing director of the farm. He has a degree in marine biology and he also grew up here.
So, it was just an outpost, and it was a self-sufficient outpost with, fruit and vegetables and chooks and ducks and goats and cows, and, we would kill our own livestock for meat, and you know what I mean? Like, it's just a self-sustaining place, and that's what I grew up with, and I just assumed that the whole world was like this.
Right, yeah, it's all relative, yeah. So young James has a bunch of buddies to run around with up here? And
Yeah, and I still do. Have you met Terry Hunter?
No, I don't think so.
Damn it, man.
Yeah.
So, Terry does cultural tours here.
Oh, okay.
He's probably one of my oldest mates. We went to school together. His parents were fantastic. I literally spent my childhood either kind of out, spearing and fishing and exploring with him and his extended family, or literally at their place, kind of eating food off the fire. But it was a great childhood.
But this place started with Dean's grandfather and that epic founding story.
So Broome, in the last shelling boom, was the place where people came, often with almost nothing, but could make a fortune if the cards landed the right way.
So kind of like the gold rush in the States, sort of.
Yeah, definitely. Pearls. So yes, it wasn't about natural pearls. It's all about the shell. So it was literally about how many kilos or tons of pearl shell you could collect. But at the same time, they say that 1 in every sort of 5 or 10,000 shell does have a natural pearl. And back then, if you happen to find one, that could be worth like a lifetime's wages.
Did you say 1 in how many?
1 in like 5 to 10,000.
You did say that.
It's not many.
Wow.
So you've got to go through a lot of shell.
Crazy.
And you're picking these things up one at a time in a hard hat, being drifted across the bush, it's not the kind of thing you're going to do to try and find pearls.
No.
But if you did find them, then, they were extraordinarily valuable.
Yeah.
And to the point where there's just fantastic stories about what happened to those pearls, because often they wouldn't necessarily kind of make it back.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
There's all kinds of snide pearl stories about, kind of people would find them and try and sneak them, and then because that was then they're set for life. They got away with it. At the Second World War, when the Japanese invading forces were threatening Northern Australia and bombed the hell out of Darwin and Broome. In fact, I think they dropped more bombs on Darwin than they did in Pearl Harbor.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was people don't realise, but the invasion into Australia was well and truly on its way.
The Japanese had a reputation for commandeering local vessels and using them to help transport troops, so the Australian Navy decided to either sink or burn almost all of the pearling luggers, which had a devastating effect on the pearling industry.
So there were only a few of them that had survived by being sort of sailed away, and my grandfather bought one of those. So he sailed it back into Broome, and it was one of only about 12 luggers, I think, in total that really ever got going after the Second World War. When he got to Broome, so you imagine the industry's completely dead now. There's just nothing left, no boats left. Yeah, that's right. So the place is reeling. It was going to quickly fade with the onset of plastics. You know, the whole thing was shifting, and he would have had no idea. So he puts together a bit of a crew, and they start, you know, fishing for pearl shell again. But quite early on, he bumped into an Aboriginal guy by the name of David Wiggan, and in Broome.
Yeah.
And David Wiggan was Bardi elder from just over here, just out of Oolin, and his family were living at Sunday Island off the coast at the time, in a mission out there. These boats were also the way that people moved around the coastline. So a lot of the Aboriginal people would actually use the opportunity to go from one place to another place by lugger. Oh. Yeah, so that wasn't uncommon, you see. And so David Wiggan, of course, probably saw the opportunity to strike up a friendship with my grandfather to help.
He had a nice boat, right?
Cruise back to Sunday Island and catch up with his family.
Yeah.
Which is what they did. And of course he was saying, oh yeah, you got to come up, you know, there's so much shell in King Sound and da-da-da, it's great, and all the rest of it. So off they went, and you know, they ended up working with David and his family and you know, the whole Bardi people pretty much, and he would use them almost exclusively for his crew. And so they'd cruise around and have all these incredible adventures. It wasn't all just pearling. Some of it was pearling, some of it was troker, some of it was croc shooting, some of it was building lighthouses, some of it, you know, all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff.
Yeah, are you kidding? That's great.
Yeah. So they had this very long-standing relationship, which went right to the, you know, end of both of their lives, really. But he was on the ground, or literally on the water, when the Americans kind of first brought over the effort to start cultured pearl, which is 200 kilometres that way at Curie Bay.
Curie Bay is Australia's first pearl farm, and through a series of fortunate events, Dean and his crew got the contract to be Curie Bay's supply boat. Dean soon saw what Curie Bay was doing with their pearl farm, and Dean being Dean, saw an opportunity. He convinced his son Lyndon, James's uncle, to come up from Perth to give pearl farming a shot. So with absolutely no knowledge of how to do this, Lyndon and a few local Bardi men get dropped off at Cygnet Bay and try to scrabble together a pearl farm. A year later, they were already seeing results. That marked the beginning of Cygnet Bay Pearl Farm. But everything that happens here comes back to the uniqueness of the place itself.
You've seen how this tide rolls in and out.
Yeah.
So, you know, 6 hours in, 6 hours out. We've got a 12-metre variation. It's
crazy.
It is a literal tsunami hitting this coast. Twice a day, it's just happening in 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
Bang, 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 bang. So that huge tidal variation creates massive currents.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's just moving all of this stuff around, right? And so there's no coincidence that in this hugely energetic, the most energetic tropical marine environment, you've also got the most energetic pearl oyster.
Yeah.
This place, this environment, you know, this coastline, it's linked to the, literally it's linked to the moon, is why Pink Tartar Maxima is here, which is why we are here.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's why the Aboriginal people literally kind of, you know, have their culture so tightly linked to it. Yeah. And it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper the more you actually understand the way that the environment connects.
It astonishes me what a hell of amount of work it is to do this.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and every step of the process. So it's really complicated. There's a lot of science to it. There's a lot of hard work, you know, and you've got to get every step in the process right. You've got to, you know, you got to dive to pick these things up one at a time. You've got to keep them healthy and happy the whole time. You've got to prep them for the pearl seeding. You've got to do all that with people that know exactly how to, you know, seed pearls with graft tissues on. And then you've got to get it all right, even to the point where the shape will be often dictated by things we do or we do not do well. So we're trying to grow a round pearl, but we don't get many of them, right?
Yeah.
But if we get it right, perfectly right, we do everything right, we get it in the right location, we handle the shell the right way, we do everything right, we might get a round pearl.
Yeah.
But in fact, the majority of the time we don't. We get a drop or something with a circle around it or a brock and, you know, and these are all just literally telling the story of what that pearl shell's gone through over 2 years.
Yeah.
And so the end result is this, you know, is this pearl that you know, someone like me that's been in the industry forever, you look at it and we see everything that's gone into it.
Yeah.
Which is really, you know, which I find kind of fascinating.
I love that they have all these different shapes because it represents,
in
its own way,
nature.
it represents nature, it represents this place, rather than this perfect thing.
Yeah, that's right. The pursuit of perfection, but rarely achieved.
I equate it to, I used to be in the Persian rug business for a while, and everyone who's new to rugs thinks, oh, I gotta buy one with the most knots per square inch. Those are not the most sought after rugs. It's these tribal rugs that have all these different anomalies that show the hand of the person in it. And to me, this shows the hand of the place, the ocean in it. And I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, you know, I think that's part of the reason why we opened the farm to the public.
They opened the Pearl Farm to the public in 2009, offering adventure tours, Bardi Jawi-led cultural tours. You can watch pearl harvests, stay in eco-lodges, eat fish caught right out of the bay. All of this turning what was traditionally a very secretive business into a transparent and educational one.
We're as far away as we possibly could be from the jewelry stores of New York and London and so on. But then it's got such a great story to tell, whether or not you know, whether or not you are just interested in the jewelry or if you're interested in the cultural aspect of it or the place or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You know, the pearling industry in this part of the country is becoming something that, you know, people seek out. That not only does represent this jewelry piece that, you know, obviously is special to them in their moment in life, but but of course it's got this big background about
comes with this story.
Yeah, where it comes from. And
And a huge part of that story is about the Bardi and Jawi people who have lived here since the beginning on Ardialoon, also known as One Arm Point, which is just a couple miles around the bay from here. These are the same people that worked hand in hand with James's grandfather Dean, his uncle Lyndon, and James himself. It's where Dean's buddy David Wiggan was from. It's where Lyndon's friends that seeded those first pearl shells with them are from. It's where James's friend Terry is from. According to James, there is no Cygnet Bay Pearl Farm without the Bardi Jawi community at One Arm Point. And this is Robert Wiggan from One Arm Point. He's also David Wiggan's youngest son. Robert is a pearl shell carver, and those carved shells, called Ridgi, have patterns that signify status, identity, and hold sacred meanings specific to the Bardi, Jawi, Yawuru, and other saltwater groups from this coastal region. Robert brought one of his favorite Ridgi along for our chat.
It's the morning star.
Yeah, why'd you pick the morning star to show?
It just tells you like when the tide's coming in, when the tide is going out, and good time to go fishing and all that. And then all of a sudden you'll see this the star will get really small, and then we know that it's like the tide is dropping down to small tide.
Wow, I love that though.
Yeah, and then when it's get more bigger, the star get more bigger, it's like the tide is getting more bigger and it's gonna be really rough weather for us to go out fishing and all that.
Well, and you survive on the ocean.
Yeah, we survive on the ocean.
Yeah. So,
but like when it's really rough, we get a couple of places that we go on, special places, you know.
Yeah.
Like in the old days, I used to pick the fish, put them traps around, you know, rock traps for fish and all that. And when it's really rough weather, we just go look in the pools. Oh yeah, we go fish, sea mullets, everything. Go just get all different fish in the rocks, in the pools, and then bring it back home to the families.
That's perfect, because everyone here in the best way has been talking about, and it's a legitimate thing, the craziness of this huge tide here.
Yeah. It's
second biggest tide in the world.
Yep, it's really big, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going over a boat, then you have to have a good boat, you know, good hard boat.
Yeah.
If you don't, goodbye.
which amazes me that your ancestors were able to do all of this on those
little raft.
On those rafts.
Yeah, they used to travel from island to island.
Really?
Yeah.
Did they ever have a sail or no?
Nah, nothing.
No sail.
Just paddle.
Just paddling away. Yeah.
But they had the brains.
They had the brains. They knew when the tides were going to help them.
Yeah, and then they used to say, "Oh, we'll cross over the next day," and bang, straight through.
Bingo.
And then let the other people know on the other side of the island.
Yeah.
Light a fire, oh, they're okay.
Would there be much contact with your people with like the Malaysians and the Japanese, or were you kind of up here?
Yeah, well, in those days, like when they start doing the pearlings and all that, they used to travel from here and they used to base in Sunday Island, you know, and made a lot of friends there, Malaysian.
Oh, they were on Sunday Island?
Yeah, they used to travel with the boat doing the pearlings and all that. And they used to, like, it was a shelter place for them to park their boat and all that.
Yeah.
But they mixed with every different workers. You know, my brother was there, my father was doing pearling, you know.
Yeah.
And I met all different people, you know. And one day used to finish their work, they say all to come together and go for a shelter.
Oh, they'd come together and hang out?
And have a, back to Broome or come back here.
Yeah.
You know. But they're all always together.
All these different cultures together.
All different cultures.
That's, I mean, to me, as an outsider, that seems pretty cool.
Yeah, one of our best friends, you know.
We headed back to Cygnet Bay to do a deep dive into the modern world of pearl farming. And spoiler alert, it's still a hell of a lot of work. I'm talking with Jordan Kalman. She works here as a tour guide, giving tours about all things pearling.
We have about 90,000 shells in the bay.
Oh my God!
It takes them 4 to 6 weeks to work from the beginning to the end of the panels. So, and they're out there almost every single day doing this all year round.
I had no idea.
Even in the wet season, the only time the boat's really not out there is if there's a cyclone. Wow. And the water conditions are too rough. But really, you're out there for 10 hours a day, sunrise to sunset. People don't realize how much work it takes just to get one singular pearl.
Yeah.
So the turnaround time is usually, it could be 5 to 6 years for a hatchery shell even. So, and we're cleaning them still once a month. So much effort goes into just getting maybe one pearl.
So one shell gets cleaned somewhere around 60 times until it comes out.
Yeah. And then you may get an empty shell as well. So after all that work, you might not get anything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this is where this is the research center here?
Yep, so it's the hatchery and the research center. So it's all kind of all in one. So these are our elderly shells, if you will. So they're all about 8 to 10 years old, and this is what we harvest on our tours for people. So basically at the end of this, they'll be destined for the dinner table, we like to say.
Right,
so it's a 2-year cycle basically where we are seeding and reseeding oysters. So it takes 2 years to develop one pearl, and they can do a max amount of 3 per cycle. So they're all in their last pearl. So we'll actually pick one if you want to see which one has a great pearl inside.
Yeah.
If you want to do the honors, you can pick which shell that we do.
Let's do that one right there.
All right. All right, let's take this guy over. So typically, if I were a technician, if I were the one actually performing this surgery, we would have this black peg actually inserted inside to prop the shell open.
Oh, okay.
Then we'd be going in with tools that look almost like dentist tools. And we're going and doing our operation, and we're able to seed, reseed, and then put them back out in the water. Exactly. But today, like I said, these guys are all kind of on the end of their life cycle, so we'll be doing a full harvest. And my tool will be the butter knife.
The butter knife.
I'm going to cut along the flat edge of the shell right here.
And
I'm going to sever something called the abductor muscle. So the abductor muscle is the only thing actually attached to both sides, and it gives the oyster a clamp mechanism. So that's how it opens and closes. So once I sever it, the oyster will be able to just fall open really nicely. There we go. So all the tension just really released. I can crack open the oyster at its hinge. This is the inside of our oyster. Basically, a natural pearl occurs when something gets inside that irritates the shell. It's actually bigger than a grain of sand. People do think that a grain of sand turns into a pearl.
Grain of sand,
Exactly, but these guys are actually found on the ocean's floor, and they will burrow in the sand, so they're actually quite used to sand getting inside. So the irritation will have to be slightly bigger. So that's when we see worms, parasites, things trying to actually get inside and eat the shell. That's what will be a natural pearl.
Gotcha. No, I didn't know that at all. All right.
So something will get inside, and this leaflet material that we're looking at right here, this is mantle tissue. Mantle tissue will secrete liquid nacre. Nacre is the white iridescent stuff that forms the mother of pearl shell and an actual pearl. So the irritant will basically just get coated in liquid nacre over and over and over until it's fully formed on all sides. Then the shell will spit it out. That's why it's actually so rare to find a natural pearl. It's a 1 in every 10,000 chance to get a natural.
Oh, so they'll spit it out.
They will spit it out. And you cannot go diving and find pearls on the ocean's floor. If this is going to give anyone any ideas about a diving trip.
All day long,
It's like, the reason we grow them, we don't dive for them, is because nacre dissolves in salt water over time. So actually, that natural pearl will just dissolve, and it will return to its natural state. So that's why, we have to grow pearls inside of a live shell, and that's also why we use secure organs all the way in the back. It's to reduce the odds of it actually getting spat out, because we want to keep our pearls if we're growing them. So we use something in the back called the gonad. Now, usually people laugh at that, but it's all right.
I kept it together, though.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate the maturity.
Well, it's a rare moment. So,
yes. So what we do is we make an incision into our gonad sac, and we implant our irritation. So something that's going to trigger the pearl production process.
Yeah.
And that is our nucleus. So it's a very tiny spherical piece of shell. So we implant our nucleus, then we take a piece of donor mantle tissue from a different shell, implant it, and we hope that the nucleus will trigger the mantle tissue, coat it with the nacre over those 2 years that it's out in the bay.
Yes.
So that is how a cultured pearl forms.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
That's not what I thought.
Yeah. So it's a very technical process. That's why it took so long for them to figure it out, because it's almost like oyster IVF. We're implanting these parts.
Yeah.
The host shell's job is just to stay nice and healthy, but we really want to see that pearl production inside the gonad.
Yep.
Now we can go in and see if we have a pearl in our
Right.
shell. So first what I'll do is I run my fingers under the mantle tissue here, and I check if there's any natural pearls, because we can get cultured and natural at the same time, but never too cultured at once. So always one seed at a time.
But you can potentially get multiple in one?
Yeah, we can get actually any natural pearls that can just come in there. They do form. So my coworker Sarah had 7 natural pearls and a cultured.
Oh my God.
It's unheard of.
It's
I've
like
never found
winning
one.
the oyster lottery or
It
something.
is,
Yeah.
quite rare. It said for her to get a lotto ticket after she harvested that shell. So I didn't find any natural pearls, and now I go into the gonad sac, and I feel around to see if I feel anything in here. Unfortunately, I don't think we have a pearl.
We drew a
in here.
blank?
We drew a blank.
So
we
obviously you want to find a pearl, but we're gonna maybe eat this later tonight, and you're gonna use the shell for all sorts of stuff.
And I'll show you how we break that down.
Yeah.
So basically, I rip off all these other ooey gooey organs just like this. So that's the nucleus, or not the nucleus, the gonad, the mantle tissue, the intestines, every other organ.
Yeah.
That's this really nice slimy stuff right
Looks
here.
great, yeah.
We send this to Moontide Distillery in Broome, and they make their pearler's gin with it. So that's gin, future gin.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the pearl meat. That is what we eat.
Yeah.
So we just slice it off the shell like this, and you can eat it raw. So do you want to try a piece?
Sure.
You can go like this, and then we can do a little cheers.
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 Yeah.
This is as fresh as you'll ever get it.
That is. Yeah, and that is meaty.
Yeah. It's more like a scallop, prawn, abalone somehow mixed together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we just give that to our restaurant. They make a pearl meat ceviche with it.
Yeah.
So basically, you have dinner and drinks sorted for you. So here you go.
Jacob Rennic has a degree in marine science and spends most of his day out here on the water. And he's giving us a first-hand look at the oyster farm itself.
You have to pull these up like once every 40 days, or what was the number? I forgot.
Ideally, you'd want to clean them every 4 to 6 weeks, So if you leave them for much longer than that, then the growth that starts to grow on top of the shell themselves will start to inhibit its ability to open up and filter feed. And if it stays that way for too long, then it will essentially starve. So what we're doing is pulling them out of the water and pulling it up into the boat, loading it through a pressure washer machine, and cleaning the top and bottom of it. And then essentially manual labour from that point on. A couple of blokes or shit girls with chisels, and they'd be smacking off that hard growth on top of the shell, trying to prevent those barnacles from closing on top of the lip.
Off.
Yeah.
It's a crazy amount of work.
It's a lot of work.
It really is, yeah.
So there we are, we have it, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 pocket panel, and generally when we grow to a full size like these ones are in here, we'll have them in 6 to 10 pockets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so any more than that and they start to get a little bit too heavy to be ripping out of the water.
Right. Well, and the pocket's just big enough for them to do their bivalvery.
Absolutely. So they do sit pretty much as I've got it right now in the water column, and they'll just position themselves with the current to be flowing to it, and that gives them the most amount of nutrient flow through the water. But in terms of where they sit in the pocket, we've got the bottom down here, and they open up on top. As
like
they would
that.
in nature, they'd attach themselves to the substrate, to the rocks.
Okay.
And they would sit like this vertically in the water column. Yeah, you get all sorts of interesting growths out there, and when they do get overgrown, we're pulling all crazy things out of the water. You know? Especially in the summer months up here. So during the wet season, the monsoonal season, you'll rip these up, and you're likely to find stuck irukandji on them. Those dangerous jellyfish.
Yeah, right.
And also even some blue ring octopus. So a lot of little deadly critters. So that's why we wear these tough gloves. Make sure nothing's getting a little nip on your finger when you're pulling them up. Generally, our lines will run for approximately 100 to 110 meters, and we've got one panel every meter or so along these lines. So 100 panels per line out here. Well, this is probably the largest of the sections, and they've got this farm here, obviously, that we'd call this inside farm, nice and inside the bay and protected. Then we've got one just outside the farm, slightly smaller, and you're essentially looking for a variation in control, you know, in where you're growing them, to see how they grow, where they grow the best. So having them in different conditions and then seeing how that plays out over the years is the way to do it.
And you've been here for how long?
2 seasons.
Yeah.
So I'd say 2 years.
Man, you're in the right place.
Yeah, that's right. There's no better playground for a marine scientist than up here.
It is a giant playground.
The next morning, we headed out to spend the day with Rosanna Angus. Rosanna is a Bardi and Jawi woman from One Arm Point, and her family is from Sunday Island, which is where we're headed today. She has way too many accolades to list. She's won awards for her tour group, Oolin Sunday Island Tours, including Australia's Top Tour Guide Award in 2023. She has also had a direct role for years in the land and cultural rights and titles for Sunday Island and its surrounding waters. Her tours focus on the beauty of the place she grew up in and on the inexhaustible depths of her people's cultural heritage here. And at this point in the episode, it'll come as no surprise to you that she also has heritage from outside of Australia.
My dad's from Singapore, so his family's from there. He came over during the pearling days in the early 60s in Broome. So he was the last of the hard hat divers that used to wear the big helmet and the lead boots.
So how does a kid, I mean, is it just sort of the typical way maybe a buddy of his had come over and said, hey, you should come over here and make some money doing this? I mean, how did he find out about pearling in Broome?
I think they were calling out for all the Asian pearlers anyway, all the experience and expertise.
Oh, so he was already doing it?
They came over from there because they were already,
They were already
doing it over in Malaysia, Singapore, so they had the skills to come over.
But it was still a pretty dangerous business back then, even in the 60s.
Yeah, he was a head diver,
so
he needed a tender. So up the top, they didn't have the gas tanks back then, so they used to have the air flow through a pipe
going down
to the pipe. So every time they needed to move along, they'd have to pull the pipe or the rope to let the tender know, so that the tender would know. So that communication was more risky back then, because I mean, obviously it was just by pulls and tugs that he had to communicate with. So the tender had to know if he was in trouble or not, or when he had to come up and all of the other above.
Yeah.
So very dangerous. And he was out on the ocean for months, a long time, months at a time. Months at a time. They were out on the oceans for months at a time. I used to wait for him on the jetty when I was 3 years old. I'd wait for him at the end of that big old lugger, at the jetty, and wait for the ships or luggers to come, and I'd walk every day and wait for him.
Oh, man.
So, but months, he wouldn't come back for months, at a time.
Yeah, so that's a different relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it speaks volumes of someone coming here and feeling accepted. Someone from a completely different culture coming into your community and feeling like, you know what, I'm staying. I feel at home here.
Accepted.
Yeah.
Marrying in and becoming part of the mob.
Yeah.
But we had an Italian guy did the same thing as well. He lived with my auntie.
Really?
He come from Italy.
Yeah.
And he's buried in the community. He didn't want to go back and get buried in Italy. He chose to get buried in the community. And that was our, uncle, Marioni. Tony Marioni and his family.
Tony Marioni. On the coast of Western Australia on one arm. That's great. Oh, man.
So a lot of families come in, but Malaysian and Asian influence up this way is a big thing.
She gets to see firsthand the effect this place, this country has on her clients.
I've had people that have come on my tour and they've come back 3 times every year, so because they feel that this place is a blessing.
Yeah.
When they've come out, they've had their own different experiences and made them feel good. So the country, I talk about country is healing, maybe it's done something to visitors that want to keep them coming back all the time.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just me. Nah, joking.
It's both.
Joking.
It's got to be both. I think it's mainly you.
There was, of course, the wide variety of cultures working here in the pearling industry, and there were also people working at the Sunday Island Mission that was here for decades, and now she sees their descendants coming here to reconnect.
But people have, 2 generations later, have come back to the same space where their ancestors or where their grandfathers have lived and worked with the people, because they want to see this country. Yeah.
Well, people want to connect with their past. You get to many times at a certain point in life, it's like, I really want to reconnect.
I want to go back to Malaysia to see my family's ancestry. I want to go Indonesia to see where that history started with the trade between Indonesian and our people, you know, long before they had proper boats and, you know.
Oh, yeah, like
So
just the outrigger that's...
The outriggers that floated here and they were trading here and then our people would go back with them. That's what happened, you know, for centuries, you know.
Can you imagine that first moment an outrigger just sort of shows up? That sort of singular moment in history. It's an amazing place.
Yeah.
It really is.
Everything can anything can happen here.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I'm a storyteller. I like telling stories. I
like hearing them, so we're working out well. Yeah. We got back underway and headed on to Sunday Island, the traditional and cultural home of the Jawi people.
All right, so here we are in a place called Gurangan. Gurangan means water that comes out of the rock. This place has been very special to my ancestors and my family for thousands of years. When you arrive in someone else's place, it's like going into their house. You've got to be welcome into their house. So same for us, we welcome our people onto the country.
Okay.
And I do a welcoming. I call out to my ancestors to welcome you in their space. All right, Ambranyoy, Nyamioy. Ngajan nyami oi, ara lalam orang branyoy, cuci aburu, cara aburu. Maria nambranya, cuci ya, kala gona lian. Kala, thank you. It has been an ancient practice, so when our ancestors used to travel from place to place, they didn't have telephones to tell people that they were coming. So smoke signals was one way they would let people know they're coming.
Yeah.
Or they would, when they see people, they'd sing out straight away. Ara lalam orang branyoy. I'm coming into your space now. Well, allow these people, allow us to come in into your space, because it's a generation of generations that our ancestors have inherently lived on this country and lived off it as well, you know, because like we always say, this land don't belong to us. We belong to the land. You know, it's the land that's going to look after us and feed us, so in turn we have to look after it and acknowledge the ancestors of that space as well. All right, so when we come here, I always bring my guests here because this is my ancestors' country. We say this is our country, but how many years before that have our old people been here looking after country? So when water, we don't use smoking. We don't do smoking in our culture.
Okay.
And I don't do smoking because I like to keep my spirits. Smoking smokes away spirits, and it can be good or bad, but still it's a practice of the smoking ceremony. Other cultures do it because it's important and relevant to them.
Yeah.
But for us, we use the water because we are water people, saltwater people. So when you come in here, you stand in the water. You're coming to my country. I want you to cleanse yourself now. It's about cleansing your feet, your energies. So with that, then you water, and make sure you touch your underarms. Do that under there so that ancestors can smell you, sense your gundar, and then your head. Wash your head because all your feelings, your head thoughts, whatever you come here, it cleanses you, it clears you as well. So when you walk away, your energies are cleansed from country. Country is healing, and it's important that sometimes we can add value to people that come here as well.
Yeah. Well, you walk me through it.
All right, when you stand in there, wash your feet, hands. Use the water to wash your hand and then under your underarm. Put it under your underarm. Back in the water. You connecting your sense back with the country.
Gotcha.
And your country and the sense are connecting. And then your head, because your thoughts of what thoughts you've come in here before and what you've brought in here will cleanse you and clear your head and leave you with good lian, meaning good feeling. Your gona lian, we say.
I like that.
Gala gona lian.
I like that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah. I mentioned we had 7 clan groups.
Yep.
And we represent Jawi here on the islands, but and then the other clan groups are on the mainland. So we're the only ones who can talk for this space. Who can
speak for this, yeah.
And that's why I want to keep that history going about, not only about the missions, but also about my family's ancestors that once lived here prior to the missions.
Yeah.
And that's why I continue with this doing this history, doing my tours.
And there has been hard-fought progress here for the Bardi Jawi people, particularly in regaining their native title and custodianship of this land and sea in 2005.
When we had to fight for native title, we had to prove that we come from here. My grandparents were a big part of the native title determinations. They were the ones who gave a lot of the evidence to the High Court judges. They had to be grilled, I guess, asked and talked about their culture, their connections, their ancestry. They had to prove all that through to a Western, Western system.
Right.
Whereas we have our cultural system where we know our protocols and our systems, and that's what keeps us going today in our traditional practices. And we got cultural protection zones all around, kind of hugs the coast of all the islands and all the coast of the Bardi Jawi country. But that's where people lived and hunted and practiced all right near the coastal parts of it.
That's where the resources are, yeah.
Yeah, so we had to change legislation. So we're the only marine park in Australia that were able to co-design the marine park with the government, because put our values first and foremost, but cultural values first, and then marine science on top, and then we're marrying the two now into schools. Yeah. The schools do marine science work now, where culture and science goes hand in hand. Having that vested interest in making sure that all decisions around saltwater country are managed right way as well by the traditional owners. Our people would wake up and just feel the winds, and they'd know by the stars when to move the boat or when to, go out hunting. Our mob have integrated within that for generations to be able to benefit, and survive in this space. And that's what we're still trying to teach people, but I'll make not so much teach our kids, but for our visitors, for them to understand that this was the traditional practices, and it's whether it's been lost or not, it's important to talk about it. Because it's not lost, but it's embedded in everything we do and in all our practices and how we do things as well. We always say, this land don't belong to us. We belong to the land.
This part of the world feels almost like Brigadoon, a place touched by something magical. At a time when the world feels a bit fractured, Broome offers another course. Is it a perfect place? No. Its history is full of struggle, of discrimination, of cultures colliding, and there is no question there's more work to be done here. Yet, this place seems to be moving in a new direction, a direction set by the same melting pot of people that have been charting their own course, following their own star over and over again for centuries. Communities taking pride in their own history while honoring the history of their neighbors, making that total greater than the sum of its parts. It's an example set by this little corner of northwestern Australia that the rest of the world would do well to take notice of.
Log on to culturequest.tv for more information about this and other episodes, and for links to follow us on social media. Culture Quest is brought to you by
RBC Wealth Management, we know you have ideas that can have you doing good or feeling great. What ideas will you bring to life?